I'm so blown away by the rapid evolution of AI. One of the things that inspires me most about Disney is obviously Walt himself. If you know anything about me, that is obvious. But it was his pursuit of technological innovation, and it is so many others and their pursuit of technological innovation that has always resonated with me. And we are truly on the cusp of a absolutely pivotal moment in our lives, probably bigger than any other moment, whether it's the advent of the internet or the iPhone. But this AI revolution, really, it's an evolution because it's happening so fast. And so I just discovered, and if you have kids, I guarantee you, I just tried this out with Yoey. Test your kids, okay? Walk up to your kids with a straight face and say, so how often are you using Notebook LM for school? And they'll be like, what? What do you know about that? Notebook LM is a whole another AI tool separate from the chat GPTs and all of these things. The feature, and I'm going to put it on Substack. So if you're listening and you're not following on Substack, get over there. But here's what it does. You upload, so you can use it to assist with documents, but there's a particular feature. It's a one-click feature where you upload a PDF and it turns it into a podcast. Now, I know what you're thinking because I thought it too. Oh, it turns it into a podcast, like it's just basically like voice to text, like or text to voice. How is that a big deal? No, it turns it into a co-hosted podcast. Two individuals, male and female, will walk you through the content that is in the document. And it took about 90 seconds to generate it. I didn't have to give it anything other than the document. And I fell out of my chair. And I did it with a study guide that I had from Disney that was passed around between technicians because it was the first file I found on my phone when I was messing around with this. And it blew me away. So then I was like, I got to do something to share with you all. I'm not going to share the Disney study guide on how to fix their rides with the public, okay? Although that was a super cool podcast. So I took the most recent, which was only about a week ago, Disney earnings report. I took the PDF and I uploaded it, and it's like a 20-minute podcast. So it's going to go up on Substack. So when you're done listening to this, go listen to that for a minute. It's not just a novelty, though. So ask your kids, are you using Notebook LM? And if you are you using the podcast feature? Because if I had the ability to turn my textbooks into podcasts, and I'm not talking about audiobooks, I'm talking about two people discussing subject matter. I'm trying to see if I can pull it up and play like a clip on my phone really quick, impromptu. I don't even know if I want to do that. I almost rather just save it. I'll just save it. You just have to go to Substack. But it was absolutely mind-blowing. And there's so many other things that I've been doing. One of the other things I did is, if you know anything about Disney, you know about the significance of the 1964-1965 World's Fair. When I was in New York for the TikTok event, we streamed it. We covered it. And I say we, myself and Nick. Nick drove us out there, and we scoped it out. It was really fantastic. It was really kind of, I was shocked at how emotional it was. So I'm kind of obsessed with it. And it's the oranges and the blues. And funny enough, I saw a clip the other day of all people, Jerry Seinfeld saying, anything orange and blue, I'm obsessed. I had no idea he was so obsessed with the 64-65 World's Fair. But I started collecting avidly after that anything orange and blue. And I've got medals and postcards and all sorts of merchandise that I got really, really cheap on eBay. And if you remember, if you've been listening to these podcasts at all, there was a conversation about, I think Vinny called in when we were doing the call-in radio shows. And he talked about riding a tire Ferris wheel. Well, then I remember Yoey hearing that, and we all went down that rabbit hole, and Nick pulled up photos, and there was a toy. And I think Vinny mentioned the toy, but the toy sells for $400 or $500 on eBay used. Okay. I found it for $75 broken. $75 broken. And it's missing 5 or 6 of the little red gondolas. They're just solid red little gondolas. And it wasn't working. And one of the rivets on it was kind of rusted out, and I whittled it out the rest of the way because I wasn't really doing any damage to anything visible. And I just wanted to get in there and see what was going on and see if I could fix it. But then I flip it over, and sometimes when it comes to fixing things, you overthink it. I flip it over, and I'm sure this will become a video at some point, but sometimes it's just easier to get on the mic, you know. That's what I love about radio. It's just to talk. So I flip this thing over, and there's inscribed on it from the manufacturer. It's stamped in it. It says, and this is all plastic, if the toy stops functioning, manually advance the gear. And there's a little kind of like window opening in the plastic underneath for the gear. And I had kind of nudged it before, but I didn't really. I was like, how funny would it be like if this 60-year-old note still holds true? So I popped the battery in, and I've cleaned the contacts and the battery holder. I've done all these other things. And I start to nudge the gear. Nothing's happening. And I'm saying, I just keep nudging it. Now I'm in the groove. I'm nudging it, you know. Next thing you know, the damn thing starts working. I now brought back to life this relic, this toy from the 1964-65 World's Fair, and I'm just missing a few seats, a few gondolas. So I'm like, well, surely there's got to be some sort of tech out there where I can take a picture of this gondola, one of these toy gondolas from the ride, pop it off the ride, take a picture of it, turn it into a 3D model so I can 3D print replacements. Because I saw a guy was selling replacements for them on eBay, but I'm not going to pay when I can print them myself. And this is why the DIY in the Disney DIY, Disney Parks DIY, this is why the DIY is so much really the brand, you know? Because I'm always doing things myself. I'm always figuring out how to do things myself. It is always sort of how I don't like relying on other people, and I also like to learn. So how can I do it myself? So I'm finding all these different apps that will do 3D scans, and I'm trying to do like a turntable kind of deal, and it's not working, right? I'm getting these really distorted things. And I'm like, there's got to just be a really AI-driven solution here. Upload a couple different pictures, different angles, and it'll figure it out. So I find something. This is after weeks of toying, no pun intended, with this. I find something yesterday. This is all on the same day. The Notebook LM. This is all one day of discovery. And that's every day is like this for me lately. And I find this app, and it's upload one picture. And I'm like, oh, it's not going to work. We've done this before, but we're already here. I upload the picture. And it does some crazy animation, which is like hyperspace from Star Wars. And it's like, give us a moment. And I'm like, absolutely. This is promising already because you took the time to do this instead of giving me a dumb loading bar. So I'm all excited by the prospect of this time warp hyperspace experience, and I'm waiting for my object file. And there it is in pure form, a 3D object that you can thumb around because it's on the phone, right? So you can use touch screen to spin around this thing, and there it is. The entire object. I immediately threw it into my printer. I have to there's one step in the middle there, but for the sake of ease, I immediately threw it into the printer. And there was some guessing and checking just because you print with supports or you can splice it and then it prints, whatever. So I decided after a couple test prints to scale it up a little bit and to splice it. So I would print two halves and then glue them together. And it is almost a one-to-one replica. A one-to-one replica. I could probably make some scale adjustments just a little bit if I wanted to, but the point is, it was one photo and AI. One photo and AI, and I'm restoring parts on a 1964-65 World's Fair toy. So all between, like again, Notebook LM, most people are familiar with ChatGPT, but there's so much more out there. There's so much more out there. And this is an opportunity for everybody. I think one of the comments I read was something to the effect, and I don't remember who said it, but the quote was something along the lines of, how people are using AI in their lives today, and that the youngest generation is using AI like an operating system. And I feel as though I've caught on to that. And I feel as though from the moment we were doing the marathon, and I think it was Greg who was like, you should try to make like a thing where it triggers a light. And I was like, I don't think you can do that without some special stuff. And then it turned out that it was a lot easier than I thought. And then that triggered this whole interactive literally an interactive series of events, which again, these are all things that have been nurturing within me for years, and I could go down these rabbit holes, but it unlocked something that had been nurturing in me for a long time with interactivity, and all the credit to Greg. But from that moment that he said that, not only did I wind up going down the rabbit hole of figuring out how to trigger lights and motors, and there's some crazy stuff sitting here that y'all even haven't seen. I did a preview the other night on Twitch, but you've seen nothing yet. It's crazy. But he sent me on this rabbit hole with that one comment, and then that took me from that to YouTube University, to embracing ChatGPT, to what else can AI do, to figuring out how to generate videos with AI, everything. And now I can tell you that I probably use a half a dozen AI tools on the regular. And this isn't to replace things. This is to supplement and assist. And it is kind of wild what it can do. So I'm fascinated by it, and I'm really excited, just to get back. And by the time you hear this, I may even be in the park. And I'm excited to get back and see everybody and slowly bring y'all over into the different things we're doing. And I think I know what it looks like now. I think I know what it looks like. But I'm very amped up by all this. And the Notebook LM stuff is just wild to me. So go to Substack later and check that out. Now, I want to switch gears. One of the things on Substack is it allows me to talk about whatever I want. I do a little bit of that on TikTok with the Disney thing. I push past it sometimes, because I don't want to be bound by the constraints of the word Disney, right? But if you go over to Substack, I'll talk about anything. And really, Substack has become that spot. Instead of having other people help me write a bunch of articles that you could find anywhere, okay, I'd rather talk on subject matters of interest. So now you can get inside my thoughts on politics and AI and all sorts of things, just anything that I want to write about, and if I had a team of people, I would say, hey, write about this and write about that, because I've got a list of topics. But I'm only one person. So between the podcast and the Substack, I'm kind of figuring out how it all should really play. So what I'm going to do later is I'm going to post the AI Disney, the Notebook LM AI generated Disney earnings report, the podcast edition. Okay, I think they call it the deep dive, but I'm going to post that on Substack. So go check that out. But there's all sorts of other stuff on there, and I got to get some other articles out. But some days I get so overwhelmed by all of this, and I'll hit a groove where I'll put out a bunch of videos, and then I'll hit a groove where I'll put out a bunch of articles, and I'm like, I got to just find that balance of doing it all. But I assure you I'm getting there. And part of it has just been testing everything, finding workflow, what works, what doesn't, But I'm getting there, and I feel that I'm getting there. I've got the Etsy store stocked. I'm happy about that. I've got the Etsy store stocked with stuff both 3D printed and sourced. There's a Joe Coconut skill crane on its way from China. Don't let the tariffs fool you. Although there was a slight increase in price, but it was nominal. So I don't know. But there's a lot going on. But what I wanted to say, and I brought up politics there when I said Substack, because I talk about whatever over there. And this really shouldn't be about politics, but the former president yesterday put out a statement through his office that he is battling prostate cancer and it's in the late stages and it has spread to his bones. Now, I want to say a couple things. Number one, I think everybody's heart should break for anybody dealing with that, and everybody's been touched by cancer. The other part of that is that you obviously wish him and his family well, and you thank him for his service. And, there was a point in time where if you disagreed with somebody, you would still thank them for their service to the country. What is it, 50 some odd years of service to the country in various capacity? But everybody's so angry and so ugly that you can't even do that anymore. But what service? What did he do? Well, listen, like him or not, and now the man is dealing with this. And I there's just such a lack of humanity. It's not everywhere, but it's mostly. And you go to the YouTube comments on anything. I saw a YouTube comment on an SNL clip I was watching, and somebody was talking about how you ruined it for me. They were bragging because this is a tangent, but they were bragging because they posted a comment that got hundreds of likes, and they were bragging how the likes were rolling in, but they stole the comment from somebody else. And I'm reading this, I got caught up in this thread, and then they were like, somebody else came in and knocked them down a peg. And they said, wow, I have no life, and this meant so much to me, and you stole my one moment. And I'm like, this has got to be a joke. And I'm like, this is not a joke. This is real life. I've seen this up close. So it's scary out there. Okay, it's scary out there. Those comments are a window into the world. And you start to see the kind of comments that come along with something like this announcement from the former president, and it is quite crazy, some of the comments. But for those that have a human heart, I'll tell you a little story. So you're hearing all these comments from people on both sides of the aisle about Biden and his how kind-hearted he is, and it feels like a eulogy already, but how kind-hearted. And just now, look, the timing is odd with the book coming out and all of that. There's the book coming out and all about the cover-up and this, that, and the other. So it does kind of feel like this is not that it's a PR stunt, but that the timing of this announcement is definitely meant to deflate that book. So let's just take that for what that is and put it to the side for a moment, because I recognize that right away. Nonetheless, I would like to share my personal story that speaks to the man's human qualities, whether you like him or not as a politician. And I don't really like most politicians, so we probably agree there. Great. Now, I'm working on the Obama campaign first time around. I started off as like independent media, running around and editing different stories for, I think it was Veracifyer.com back in the day. And then I became a volunteer field organizer on the Obama campaign. So by the time Biden becomes the VP, or the VP, the candidate, the nominee, we're in Henderson, Nevada, and he's coming up to do a rally. So he's now doing his thing, and Obama's out there doing his thing. So there's a Biden rally. Who wants to work I'll work the Biden rally. So I go, and at the time, my hair was the longest it's ever been, and I have curly hair, and it can become an afro. What happens when it gets longer than that is the phase that it was in during this time in my life. So my hair is down to my shoulders, and I go to the rally site, and Obama's not there. It's just Biden, and he's the VP candidate, nominee candidate. I don't remember the timing. I don't. It's early. I've only had a cup and a half of coffee. So Here I am, no staff badge, no volunteer badge, nothing. And they don't have any more for whatever reason. And I happen to be assigned to working with the Secret Service. So the Secret Service said, no problem. We're just going to give him a code name. So instead of having a badge that said I worked there, because of my hair, the Secret Service gave me the code name, the Hair. So now I'm running around this event. It's early. There's nobody, no public people are there yet. We're just getting everything going and set up for the day. And whenever I needed to leave the boundary point and re-enter, and the Hair is coming through. The Hair is coming through. We're sending the Hair through. It was kind of cool. Not going to lie. It was kind of fun. I had a Secret Service code name for a minute. How many people can say they had a Secret Service code name? So finally, it's rally time, and Biden does his thing. And I'm standing next to a Secret Service agent, and we are on the side of the stage. There's people by us, but we're right kind of where he's coming off the stage. And he comes down, and he starts literally shaking hands and kissing babies. And again, I don't have any identifier on me, so I look like I'm part of the crowd that I'm standing in. And I'm standing next to the Secret Service guy, and over comes Biden. And he's talking to this one and that one, and I wanted to shake his hand, and he grabs my hand, but he doesn't let go. And he doesn't look at me. I mean, he looked at me briefly, but he doesn't, continue a conversation with me. He just grabs my hand. And then he starts talking to 5 or 6 other people around us. And he won't let go of my hand. Then he comes back to me, and I can't even remember at this point what the conversation was. Okay, I really can't. Because I was like, what is going on right now? Why is this man? And he was, by the way, I'm telling you this story not even realizing that this would then become not just the vice president, but the president. And again, like him or not, it's like, how crazy is this? The president won't let go of my hand, right? And boy, when I think about how many different politicians I've had interactions with and how many presidents I've stood next to and met, I'm fortunate in that respect. So, and that's a story for another day. So anyway, he finally lets go of my hand, It's minutes. It's literally minutes. It's not seconds, it's minutes. And I know this because the Secret Service agent turns over and looks at me and he says, it's our job to pull your hand from his. That's our job. But I didn't even try because it was clear he was not going to let go. That's the story. I don't know what else to say, but from that moment, it was such a human thing. It was the connection. It was watching him as he was holding my hand, talking to other people and connecting with them, and then coming back and looking me in the eye. I can barely remember what the exchange was between us in that moment. Okay, I really can't, which is wild because I remember everything around it. I think I was just so, kind of taken aback. And then the comment by the Secret Service, which sort of the Secret Service officer, which affirmed the emotion. And so that's my story. So I want to thank President Biden for his service. And I just wanted to share that with you because I hadn't thought about I used to think about that all the time. I hadn't thought about that until last night, and I sat down to start to do the podcast last night, and I was like, I got to wait till tomorrow. I even started recording, and I'm like, I just do it fresh because I really wanted to take the time to absorb that moment again. And my heart goes out to anybody dealing with that. Cancer is brutal. But it's sickening that we live in a world now where even something like that is just inherently divided by politics, whether it's people's response online or whether it's the sort of layer that is this book and the fact that that's being put out by a quote unquote journalist, which I listen to CNN ad nauseum. Jake Tapper is not a journalist. Okay. He's not. He's a news anchor and an author and a wannabe novelist. And it drives me crazy. The same way I don't think politicians should be allowed to have a podcast or put out a book in office. I do not like the fact that a newscaster is putting out a book, any kind of book, whether it's a novel, but particularly a book on this subject, and he's out there shilling 2 books at the same time. I don't like it. Now, I don't know what his deal structure is, and I looked it up to see if Simon & Schuster was tied to Warner Brothers. So I don't know what the deal structure is there. I don't like it. It's in my mind, it's a conflict of interest because you're part of the cover-up. And now it's just this looming shadow. So whether it was a PR move by the Bidens to announce it when they did, the way they did, okay, maybe it is. But it does make that whole book and the whole concept of what happened become this sort of unnecessary looming shadow. And I think if we could shed the politics and just look at the humanity and the human moment and just say, oh my gosh, most of us know exactly what this is, and just, think and hope the best for somebody. I mean, are we that far gone as a people? Are we that far gone? You don't have to like the man's you don't have to look. There are people out there that I completely disagree with that I respect. I'll give you a perfect example. So I was watching Bill Maher the other night. Scott Jennings. Again, I watch CNN all the time. Scott Jennings was on. Okay, first of all, he was dressed like a peep. He looked like he was cosplaying as a peep. I was like, what is he wearing? It's like pinks and yellows and blues. But okay. But anyway, so Scott Jennings was on, and I think he's running for Senate. He won't get there yet, but what was interesting to me was, and you want to talk about respect, is this man's work schedule. He said he lives in Kentucky. Every Monday he flies into New York. Okay, because I guess he doesn't really get on CNN until the evening. And if he has to go to D.C., he'll take the train down, which is like, what, a 3.5-hour ride, 4-hour ride from New York? Because I know from like Philly, it's I think a 2.5, 3-hour ride. So whatever it is. So and then he flies back to Kentucky. And I was, oh my gosh. Now, look, I don't know how much they pay this man, and I don't know how much of that travel is covered in his salary. Either which way, that is the job that he does, and that is the work ethic he has to do that job, and I commend it. I mean, that is wild to me. I don't agree with 99% of this, 90% of the stuff that he says, but I got nothing but respect for doing that kind of travel on the weekly and then being able to put a smile on his face most of the time and be effective in communicating what he communicates. Because listen, you don't have to agree with the guy to acknowledge he's very good at his job. I mean, that guy can polish the turd better than anybody. So there's just another example. Let me take a minute to thank our sponsors. I got to talk about Colleen and Pampered Chef for a minute. Pampered Chef. Colleen sent me stuff to make a pizza, and I didn't do it on the live. I shot a video. The video is done. I haven't posted it. Maybe I'll post it on Substack. But I made this video, and I made the pizza, and it was delicious. And then she gave me the donut stuff, and it was sitting there, and I made them, and they were delicious. So you got to go to Pampered Chef because she's been so supportive, and she's just not only just a really fantastic person, but she's just got a fantastic product line over there. And you could say, well, listen, it's Pampered Chef. Anybody on Pampered Chef has that. Yes, but she knows what you're looking for. And I told her, and I use this knife all the time now because I have these. I told her, I'm missing this, that, and the other. And she hooked me up. So whatever you're looking for, she knows. She'll get you the great deals. It's Colleen Herman. So go to pamperedchef.com/PWS/Colleen Herman. Yeah, there's 100 different people on Pampered Chef, probably 10,000 people on Pampered Chef. Go check out Colleen's page. She will take care of you. And she has these goals she needs to meet, so I'll help her hit her goals. But this knife she gave me, right? Because here's what I'm doing now. I'm trying to eat better. And I'll have a hard-boiled egg. And I've gotten the process of boiling the hard-boiled egg so perfect that it's a nice creamy yolk. So I'll have one of those, So iced black coffee that I'm brewing at home, and I figured out the perfect way to brew iced black coffee so you have none of that nutty flavor. If you ever make coffee, iced coffee at home, or bought it from the grocery store in the bottle, it tends to have a very nutty flavor. Another conversation for a different day. So I figured that out. And then the other piece of the pie there is the avocado. So Colleen gave me this really fantastic knife from Pampered Chef, and I just kindly, gently slice the avocado skin on the outside, peel it off, crack it open, and I just eat an avocado. Hard-boiled egg, an avocado, and some iced black coffee. That is the bulk of what I'm eating these days. So go check out Colleen at Pampered Chef. And then, of course, RK Law, Russell, RK Law, rklawpro.com. And I'm doing this off the top of my head. So if for some reason I'm getting the links wrong, go check out the description below. And no, that's not a trick to get you to go check out the links and click on them in the description below, but go do it anyway. Because if you live in Florida, Russell will take care of you. He's fantastic. Russell's been helping me out on something that I am going to be sharing with you soon. And Russell is just, not only is he available and dependable, but he's just straightforward, to the point, and he's not going to waste your time. So go check out RK Law if you are in Florida. Okay. Now I've got my Etsy shop, Theme Park Factory, over on Etsy, and of course my friends at Flash Forge. If you're in the market for a 3D printer, I was going to start giving you all promo codes and doing the whole sales thing with them, and that became a whole paperwork mumbo jumbo. So I don't really care. I'm just happy to have them as a sponsor and to remind you to go to Flash Forge. We should be doing post tariff. We'll be doing that giveaway, but they're not going to send me anything until that all gets resolved. It's so inconsistent because I've got the skill crane coming, and I think that was like a couple extra bucks compared to what it should have been with a tariff increase at the rate it was. So I don't quite understand it, and I don't know if I'm going to get hit with something when it finally arrives. I have no idea. We'll see, and I'll keep you updated on that. But at least from the Flash Forge side, they're not going to send anything until the tariffs are resolved. But we're going to do a Flash Forge 3D printer giveaway at some point. Now, a little news here. First off, I watched this boat crash on the Brooklyn Bridge this morning, and I almost fell out of my chair. I couldn't believe what I'm seeing. And it looks like a movie. And the response from the crowd is such that people are entertained. They're shocked, but they're entertained. And we're so desensitized because of the special effects in movies and the violence on television that we see something real like this, that we digest it at the same level as entertainment. And I couldn't believe that there were people standing up on the mast on this boat. And then I realized it was going backwards, and just absolutely mind-blowing. And then you have the fertility clinic being blown up in Palm Springs, and it's just sort of like everywhere you look, it feels like things are falling apart. Everywhere you look. And you have to kind of find that balance, for yourself, where you don't feel completely overwhelmed by the negative, right? I talked earlier about being overwhelmed by prospects, but also overwhelmed by the negative. I consume a lot of news. I'm very interested in what's going on in the world. It becomes really, really hard sometimes when it's all over the place. But here's the thing. I find being more in tune to what's going on more times than not pays dividends, because I learn. It is when I find myself doom scrolling and sort of just going down those nothing rabbit holes of short form dumb videos, like the ones where they put like a hole in a countertop and like paint something around the hole, like to make it a cartoon, or there'll be like a hole in the table and they'll put like sunflower seeds in it and glue and sand it, like that kind of stuff. So I find that because we are living in this multi-screen world, it's not even like a second screen anymore. But I find that sometimes it can be very overwhelming. It can be very, very overwhelming And then you add the social media component and the way that social media forces you to care about things that you don't care about. Like, did I lose a follower? Did I gain a follower? Who cares? You don't know these people. So all of this going on as the world is sort of burning. And it's not even politics, right? We're talking about things that are going on. It's just the state of people, and all of these things are going on. And it's like we're in shambles. We're in shambles, and people are angry, and people aren't really talking. Everyone's kind of siloed. And then Disney announces they're going to open in Abu Dhabi. And I have never seen so many people come together. I've never seen, it was amazing to see. I was laughing at the way all of these people, whether it was on Twitter or wherever, were suddenly in agreement. People on both sides of the aisle when it comes to Disney and the politics of Disney and all of this, because people will say, give me Disney and don't give me politics, but they're completely intertwined, particularly in the Iger era. And I was like, wow, look, something everybody can agree on. It's absolutely absurd. It's never going to happen. It is completely hypocritical for the company to be doing it. And then it comes out that Iger poo-pooed the idea of it going into Saudi first. He thought it was too close to home. You know what? That's against our views. We've got keys. We got optics to worry about. But, Saudi adjacent, not so bad. Abu Dhabi sounds nicer. Abu Dhabi sounds a lot more Disney friendly than Saudi Arabia. Either which way, it's not going to happen. But I think it's kind of funny that Iger didn't want it in Saudi Arabia, but was okay with taking the money in Abu Dhabi. Now, at the end of the day, the reason I think it's not going to happen is because of the way that they do business over there. And I just don't think that Disney's going to like it. I think Disney's going to take the money, and then there's going to be a fallout. And I think the other part of this is the leadership change at Disney. Does this signify that tomorrow is the new CEO? Because you're doing this in concert with him. And if Iger leaves and it's not tomorrow, what's going to prohibit another CEO from coming in and squashing this deal? This is a cash grab, but there are real issues here. And look, it was interesting to me to see how many people, irrespective of their personal ideologies, were aligned on this issue. And I also, just to kind of pull back with Trump going over to the Middle East and talking about not imposing our way of life on folks over there, and how quote unquote nation builders imposing ideology isn't the way to do it. Like, it's not to say that we should be turning a blind eye to the way that people choose to live over in the Middle East. Okay, but you also can't impose your way of life on other people's culture, right? So there is this balance. But the idea that the Disney brand somehow fits in with anything in the Middle East is lost on me. It's just lost on me. From a business perspective, from a cultural perspective, and then on top of it, it's going to be primarily indoors from what I'm reading, which, okay, fine. But it's going to have to be pretty spectacular. It's going to have to be pretty spectacular at that point if it's going to be indoors. Otherwise, it's going to fall to all the same problems as any other indoor amusement park. And I've never been to a good indoor amusement park. Maybe you have. You can tell me I'm wrong. That's what the comments are for. I've never been to one. So I'm looking at this and I'm like, wow, the world's on fire. People are up in arms. They're blowing things up. They're burning Teslas. They're it's insane. Yeah, P. Diddy's on trial, and boats are crashing into bridges, and planes are falling out of the sky. But the one thing people can agree on is this is an insane move for Disney. And I'm seeing this coming from both sides. People that are, on both sides of the quote unquote argument, whatever the argument is. Because again, there's been a lot of politics with it really kind of, you could call it Chapek era, but it really is all Iger when it's all said and done. All of that nonsense, all of that when Chapek dipped his toe in the water there with Florida and all of that. And I call it nonsense just because when you look at this, you realize that most of it, if not all of it, is optics. And these companies don't care about their employees. These companies don't care about human rights. These companies care about money. And these executives in the C-suite care about money. And that's it. So they're going to line their pockets and they're going to turn a blind eye. And that's why it's so much easier for Bob Iger to say put it in Abu Dhabi than putting it in Saudi Arabia, because it's just far enough away, even though it's not at all. And in many ways, that's just relying on the stupidity of Americans. Now, I was supposed to go to Saudi Arabia. Right before the 2016 election, I had the arcade business. This guy came to me. He said, I represent a Saudi prince. And he said, I need you to fix these Mario Karts. And he brought me 4 Mario Karts, full arcade game Mario Karts. Said, I got these off of eBay. These are going to Saudi Arabia, but I need you to fix them. I open up these Mario Karts, and all of the monitors, now you were talking about 120 volts, okay? We're talking about electrical here. High, not high voltage, but 120 is enough to take you off, take you off your feet, knock you out. It's enough. Wired with speaker wire and hot glue, not solder. Not an exaggeration. 4 Mario Karts headed to Saudi Arabia, to the Saudi prince's tent in some arcade he's building. And these games are, the electrical wiring has been replaced with hot glue and speaker wire. I fixed it. I had my guys fix it. We took care of it all. All right? And I went and I got my passport. And I went and I ordered parts. And I got reimbursed and I shipped the parts to Saudi Arabia. And I'm getting ready to go to Saudi Arabia. And the guy who's representing the Saudi prince is telling me, prepping me, what we're going to do, what we're going to work on, and all these kind of things. And I'm like, all right. And I said, I just hope if Trump gets elected, this is 2016, if Trump gets elected, that I don't get stuck there. I don't even remember the context of why I said that, but I guess enough was being said on the campaign trail that I would have made a joke along those lines. And he looked at me and goes, he's never getting elected. I said, oh, obviously he got elected. I never heard from this guy again. Disappeared. Now, I don't know what happened to this day. He never resurfaced. Disappeared. I mean, we went as far as I remember going down to like a shipping port and inspecting 24 arcades for this, 24 arcade games for this Saudi prince. And they were all crated, and we had to go in there and open them up and make sure everything was working. And I don't even remember what exactly we were doing on them all. We were doing power conversions. That's what it was. Is we went in and put power converters on each one of these, and we're talking big, big fun games, like fun kind of stuff, like Dave and Buster level stuff. I never got to go. I don't know. Maybe in many ways it was a blessing in disguise. I was ready to go. I had my passport. I sent parts to the desert. We put all the converters on. I don't know. So somewhere there's an arcade in Saudi Arabia that I worked on. Never got to see it, but I worked on it. Fun little story there. All that to say that the second I saw that announcement, I was like, there's just no way. This won't work. It just won't work. So stay tuned to see how that transpires. All right. And one of the other things I want to talk about, just to kind of stay within the world news of it all, is I'm an independent. And I have always wanted, since I was a kid, for as long as I've been politically interested, a disruptor. I always felt like we would do better to break apart these systems that we've been relying on for far too long. And you can laugh at me, but I supported Ralph Nader when I was in college. I just wanted something different. And I used to think third party was part of the solution. I'm not so sure it is right now. but I always wanted a disruptor. Now, by the time Donald Trump got off the escalator when he first announced he was running, he lost me. Okay, I enjoyed the man as an entertainer. He said shocking things on the Howard Stern show that I used to listen to all the time, and it was incredibly entertaining. But that doesn't really translate when you're trying to be a world leader. But I have to say, and I didn't vote for the guy, but I have to say, when you watch some of this disruption roll out, you have to give credit where credit is due. And those comments that he made in the Middle East, and it's a much more complicated story with the Middle East, but the comments about not trying to basically impose democracy on other people's culture, that doesn't excuse behavior, doesn't excuse murdering journalists and oppressing people. But disrupting the norms isn't necessarily a bad thing, especially in the name of peace. And I do believe you're talking about a president that is interested in peace over war. Whereas generally, we have been electing people to the office of the president, for at least my lifetime, that have been driven by war. Now, you can go down the whole rabbit hole of the formation of the Trilateral Commission and all of these things. And I really, I don't know. I actually haven't really ever run Donald Trump's background against the Trilateral Commission directly. Okay. But he certainly was an outsider, but he was also somebody that was kind of being groomed. I mean, you go back to when he was in his 30s. I mean, the man was saying things back then that he's still saying now. Now, times have changed, and I think the reason that he got elected in many respects is because he has been consistent, and he, whether you like it or not, that consistency holds truth, right? And because of that, and because he's so ingrained in the culture, when he got elected the first time, that disruption, that shock, people couldn't handle it, right? The guy that used to say crazy things on the Howard Stern show is now in the Oval Office. It doesn't work. What I think we're seeing this second time around right now is and he's not always getting it right, and nobody does. But I think what we're seeing is the value of disruption. It's you can laugh at the breaking the stock market to fix it kind of thing, but it is rebounding. So irrespective of how I may feel about an individual, I want the country as a whole to succeed. I would like to see anyone who is the president succeed as long as they're doing things in the best interest of the country. I like the idea of less war. I don't like the industry that is war. I think it's part of a couple things that keep us heavily divided in this world that we live in. So for me, I look at him going over to the Middle East, and I could point out all the problems. People want to talk about the plane from Qatar or Qatar, and I love how everyone pronounces it differently. And I'm over here worried about how I'm going to say it. And I'm like, in the course of one news interview, they're calling it Qatar and Qatar and Qataris and the Qatars. And I'm like, okay. So you can nitpick all that. And I'll talk about the plane for a moment. But I have to say, the idea of nation building and trying to impose democracy where it doesn't belong, going all the way back to the Iraqi wars, it doesn't make sense. It never did. It never did. So I just want to recognize the value of disruption. And Fareed Zakaria had some comments along those lines as well. So, I am kind of echoing some of that sentiment, but it's so true. And when you look at business and when you look at innovation, it is those that are willing to push through and break through that create new opportunity. So you may not like the man, you may not like his approach, but there is value in disruption. It's not always going to be value, and I recognize that. And the stock market's been through a roller coaster ride. But, sometimes shaking up the norms, sometimes rearranging the shelves in the store is just enough. Remind people, bring the things that were in the back to the front, just kind of rearrange things a little bit. And I'm not excusing the way he's done things, and I'm not excusing any of the things that he's done. But I agree with the sentiment. I've never liked the idea of imposing democracy where it doesn't belong. Not because people don't deserve humanity, but how are you going to impose your beliefs in an area where they're completely foreign? So I remember like them pulling down like the Saddam Hussein statue and all of that. Like those are wild times. And we all lived through that. So it's not that I'm giving the guy a pass, but I have to recognize the value of disruption. It is something I've always wanted, and I'm seeing glimmers of it working right now. So there you go. Now, the plane, and then we're going to wrap this up. Here's the issue with the plane. The real issue with the plane is that it's a dumb idea because it's an old plane, right? That's the real issue. Beyond that, if Boeing would just deliver on what's been ordered, they'd have brand new planes. They're not offering him a brand new plane. They're offering him a used car. Okay? Now, the outrage over the Qataris giving him money. Do you know how much money comes from Qatar, from Qatar? I have articles that I have not even posted on Substack yet, because I've been researching this for weeks. When I started going down the original Chat GPT rabbit hole months and months and months ago, I started using it as like a research assistant. And I've been researching all of this stuff. And I'm only one person. So at some point I got to put this article out this week too. The amount of money that the QIA, which is a sovereign wealth fund, it's the Qatari Investment Authority or something like that. They have so much money funneled into this country, into infrastructure. They have it in entertainment. They have it in news. They're invested in so many different entities. The Chernin Group being one of the biggest, and the Chernin Group has got their hands in everybody on both sides of the aisle. From Barstool Sports to like the Young Turks to Spotify. So you can see that if you really take a pull back, that Qatar has money all over this country. It's got nothing to do with the president. Do I think they should be giving him the plane? No. I don't think he should take the plane. Obviously, there's security issues, but before he even gets to the security issues, it's an old-ass plane. Okay? Boeing, if they can do an order for planes from Boeing, why can't Boeing deliver what we ordered? That should be that. Okay, so there you go. But when it comes to Qatar, they got so much money tied up in this country, it's absurd. And that's why you got to look at these independent journalists for what they really are. They're controlled opposition on both sides. That's all it is. And it's all there to keep you divided. And you scroll. And I was saying to Yoey on the phone, I go, oh my God, my Instagram feed is so much better than it's ever been. It used to be just Disney content relentlessly. And now it's tech, it's innovation and business. And the things that I'm scrolling and absorbing, not all of them, but they're becoming more valuable because I'm finally getting to the more valuable stuff, right? And then the algorithm is in turn giving me more of it. And that's what I'm engaging with. So, look, if you just do a little bit of research, you'll see how much money Qatar is giving to this country. And for that matter, I mean, how much money China has tied up in this country. I mean, they own us, right? So we, even though we're supposed to be the quote-unquote richest country on earth, we're beholden to these other countries. And we may not like what goes on the ground. We may not like the way that they treat their people, and we may not like the way that they, operate in terms of ideology and politics. But we're entrenched with these people, right? I mean, this is a global economy. We are genuinely entrenched with these people. And if the average person would take a step back, they wouldn't get hung up on these bullshit wedge issues, because it's not even a wedge issue. It's a fake wedge issue. That's hence the BS. And start to look at what's real and where the real problems need to be solved. If you're concerned about the president getting a plane from them, you should be concerned about the amount of money that they've got invested across this country. And if you're concerned about that, then you should be concerned about the amount of money that China's got tied up in this country. And if you're concerned about that, then you should be concerned about the education or the lack thereof in this country. And what's going on right now with the Department of Education and all of this, okay? And I'm not even going to get into that, all right? Because I'm not even necessarily up to snuff enough on all of that. But I can tell you that historically in this country, our educational system has been broken. And we shouldn't accept it as a norm that teachers have to pay for school supplies. We shouldn't accept it as a norm that there is violence on a regular basis in our schools, right? So to fix our educational system and to help our kids become more productive adults when they grow up, so that we're not just raising children to raise children, these are things we should be focusing on. And that is where policy can kind of start from the middle and work its way out, as opposed to people being stuck in their corners and fighting and yelling and screaming and getting nowhere. Find the common ground and work outward, right? Okay, what do we both agree on? We want better education. Okay, great. What does that look like? Okay, great. How are we going to get there? All right. And then as those little disagreements come up, that's where you reason, and that's where you debate, and that's where you work through, and that's where you find the ability to compromise. But if everybody stays to the left and to the right, there's never an opportunity to get to that middle. So it drives me crazy when people get upset over something like this airplane, because there's so many other things you're turning a blind eye to, and that's not a real issue. And he'll probably never take the plane anyway. It's an old plane. Who wants the plane? There's so many of these stories out there on a regular basis. And because Trump is a media president, a TV president, a social media president, because he's an entertainer / leader, we get hit with it 10x. You know, you didn't get that ever before. You didn't even get it to this level on his first term. I mean, he was everywhere, but I mean, it's more than ever, right? And so what happens is, in the spirit of Steve Bannon's flood the zone, you get all these crazy things, which, again, I mean, when's the last time you heard about Canada and Greenland? You haven't. So instead, we're talking about whatever, whatever the crazy thing is, the plane and whatever the other crazy topics are. And then all of these other things are going on, right? And that's not just relegated to Trump. That's the politics of Washington. And the media is a huge part of that. So we find ourselves so often harping on crazy things, okay, and avoiding the simple issues because they don't get clicks, they don't sell. I was going to say they don't sell newspapers. Nobody's selling newspapers. They don't get clicks, right? So it's so much easier to have a headline or an article that's built to divide than it is to stimulate curiosity, right? It's easier to put up an article that says, who was it? It was like somebody was like, you're was it the Bidens where it was like, Jill said you're next, or somebody passed away and said, you're next. I don't remember who it was. There was some article and it was written on like TMZ that like somebody told their spouse that you're next when their so-and-so, the matriarch of the family, died. I can't remember the article now. And anyway, it was written in such a way that it was like saying it was like Michelle Obama. That's what it was. Barack Obama, I guess, said to Michelle Obama when her mother passed away, you're up, meaning it's you're the matriarch. It's your time to, it's to fill the shoes. And I think the way that TMZ wrote it was like, you're the next to die. And they did it that way because it drives more clicks, which gets more money, right? And that's a huge part of the problem. It's not interesting if you do it the right way. It's not interesting to say that, such attraction may be temporarily down for a few months in Disney. It's much easier for one of these nudniks to write a clickbait headline that says it's being removed, when you find out that no, it's being closed so they can remove the sign. Let me just word it in such a way that people aren't clicking because they're genuinely interested. They're clicking because I'm fear mongering or rage baiting. And then even though you're getting the ad revenue and maybe even the follows, you got to ask, why are they there? Because every single time they fall for the same trick. Are you what quality are you providing the audience? And that's something I was saying to these folks at Evermore. Is like, I want to put out better content, quality content. I want to put out content people aren't doing. I think part of the, and I was reading something the other day on this, but I think part of the reason that I find that I am not doing enough for myself in terms of putting out better stuff is because I'm constantly raising the bar. So nothing's ever good enough. But I'd rather put out a whole bunch of different stuff and people just like that they're getting different things and seeing new things than put out the same old thing. You know, I made a comment to one of them there when we were walking around at Evermore. It's like, oh, everybody's got a podcast. Me too. Like, I'm not even doing video right now because I don't care. Who wants to see my face talking? It's called radio. You don't need to see my face talking. So, yeah, there's a version of this on YouTube it'll be audio. So I just wanted to do radio because it's not radio if there's a camera on anymore. You know? And I made that comment, and I didn't mean it in a negative way, but it's just sort of like, oh, everybody's got a podcast. Like, how do you separate yourself? You know, and this is why people like Walt Disney inspire me, because Walt was always trying to do something different, and he was never complacent. And I find, for me, that wherever I'm headed, it's going to be rooted in the desire to break ground, to discover new things, the DIY of it all, like I said. How do you do it? Well, I can rely on that guy to do it, or I can do it myself. So oftentimes just learning new things, and then the domino effect of that is it's so much fun to learn new things. So not only do you get the value of, you know, hey, I did that, right? There's the satisfaction in doing and actually, oh my God, I accomplished something. I built a computer from scratch and it works. Like, that's awesome, right? But then it's like, where is that taking you? And so for me, this whole why of it all, which is learning new things, discovering where we're headed, figuring out how to do things that I've never been able to do before, or looking at something and going, how does that work? And how can I emulate it? And trying to reverse engineer things. That is the way that my mind works. So I don't go off of and I was reading again something about this the other day, so it helps me digest the thoughts. But the why that I do what I do is generated or driven, I should say, by a desire to discover, right? And it is not trying to latch on to something because it's trending or to emulate something because it's popular. It's to discover, to learn, and to innovate, and hopefully be entertaining along the way, at least introspectively entertaining, right? Like, obviously, I get stimulated by the idea of not just being able to fix something like the World's Fair Ferris wheel toy, but finding a solution to the problem and actually delivering on it in 3D printing those replacement gondolas, right? So it's a whole thing, right? And I know I should be making videos on this stuff, and I will, but for me, sometimes it's more valuable to put the quick money to the side, even though I got to get back out into the parks because that's where I make my most money, and I got to do it. And if you're listening to this, I may already be in the park. I got to. But sometimes I do firmly believe, you know, in the pursuit of doing different things and breaking new ground, you have to put the easy money to the side, and you have to take the harder road. And I'm having a lot of fun discovering all these new toys. I'm having a lot of fun doing all this stuff. But now I'm getting to the point where I'm like, I just want to pick up the phone and go live. And I know I could do that here and people would say, what's up? But it might be nice to actually be in the park. Not because I need the park, but that's where people like to see you. And maybe that's a great place to give everybody else a little update. And if you want to follow me over here while we're doing something or over there, I kind of know what the future looks like. I'm not ready to do some major rebranding, and I don't see the TikTok channel going anywhere or rebranding. But I'm learning, and I'm learning that I will share to the best of my ability this process, this journey with you, and there will be places for everything. So if you want to hear my thoughts on some of these other issues, that's what Substack's for, right? If you want to see just fun behind the scenes stuff, you got Instagram. Okay, I'm out there on Twitter just speaking my mind on anything. And then of course we're having fun on Disney and Disney related stuff on TikTok, trying to entertain, educate, or inspire, one of the three, right? So like those are my pillars, and you got Twitch and YouTube and all these other pieces, and I know where they're headed and all the interactive components. I mean, I'm going to tell you this because it's buried at the end of the podcast. I have it programmed here that people can send whatever. It doesn't even have to be a gift on TikTok, right? I could set it so you say you hit 1,000 likes on TikTok. You hit 1,000 likes, it'll knock something into the fish tank. We'll start playing Will It Float, right? Or I could say send a galaxy and it'll trigger the Lego roller coaster. It's all done. It's all sitting here. It's ready to go. I just have so much going on. So anyway, let me remind you one last time, Pampered Chef, Colleen Herman. Okay. RK Law, Russell, RK Law Pro. You've got the Theme Park Factory at my Etsy. Go buy some stuff. And, of course, FlashForge, my friends over at FlashForge, if you're looking to get a 3D printer. I don't know why I said that like Tweety Bird. But if you're looking to get a 3D printer, go check out FlashForge. All right. Thank you very much. And I'll see you when I see you.